Sunday Surefire Podcast. I'm your host, the Commish. Joining me today is the co-host, the one and only Ethan Weaver.
Kamish, how we doing?
We're doing pretty good, brother. Doing pretty good. We got week 9 behind us. We are moving on to week 10 on the DFS front. As always, here we're going to be talking prices on DraftKings for your daily fantasy football lineups for this week. But before we do that, as always, we got to rewind and talk about what went well for us in week 9 with our Told You So segment.
You like that? You like that?
And we'll throw it to you, my man. You were the winner last week of our head-to-head contest. So why don't you start us off and let me know what went well for you in week 9?
Yes, and a big reason for my win was Rashad White. He cost $5,600 on DraftKings last week, and he gave you 27.9 fantasy points. Part of my hot take last week that he was finally going to score a second touchdown of the year. He did just that with 2 rushing touchdowns, actually. So he won up that one. But just a great performance by him fantasy-wise. Like I said, 2 rushing touchdowns. He had 20 attempts on the ground. He had 4 catches for 46 yards through the air. My bold prediction was that he'd have, I believe, 7+. He didn't get there, but hey, I was happy with almost 30 points. So he was a big reason why I was the winner amongst us 3, that is, this past week.
Yeah, that was definitely a big leg up for you. Always nice when one of the guys you call out hits pay dirt multiple times in the same week. Definitely sets you up for success for sure. A few guys I got right here last week. My bullish buy was CeeDee Lamb. He was expensive, of course, for $8,200, but did return 32.1 fantasy points. Ramondre Stevenson, I think I mentioned last week that you were just 1 week a little too early on him, and that week 9 was the week he was going to go off, and he ended up returning 22.9 fantasy points at a cost of just $5,400 in your lineup. My defense planned out too. The Saints were expensive, $4,100 for them, but they did hit double digits like I promised you that they would, return 13 fantasy points. And my hot take also came through last week. I told you that the Raiders were going to beat the Giants by double digits, and what do you know? They end up rallying around new interim head coach Antonio Pierce, and they win going away with a score of 30-6 against the lowly New York Giants. So that's what we did well in week 9. But as always, we turn the page quickly around here. There's always another week on the horizon for you to crush in your lineups, and that's why we're here to help set the table for you in order to help you get ahead here in DFS. And to make sure you're staying ahead on all of our other fronts, whether it be DFS, whether it be the gambling scene, best ball, dynasty, whatever it is, check us out on our Discord. It's pinned on all of our social media channels. Check us out on X at Sunday_Surefire to see more of our great content that we talk about here on the episode, and also that other things that you're missing by not being part of that community. So please join us. It's all good times in there, good vibes only, and it's we're here to help you win some money. So let's keep doing that here. Rolling into week 10, Ethan. Who is your bullish buy for this week? What expensive player are you paying the price for and setting in your lineup and hoping that they deliver big results this week?
Before I get into that, I just want to comment on all your I told you so's. I mean, you rattle off, I believe, 4 there, and I still beat you. So I don't really know how that happened, but it was definitely a good week for you in terms of the podcast last week. And I also wanted to mention that Rashad White was the RB1 of the week. So that's always a good thing to have.
Well, yeah, it sounds like you kind of answer your own question there when you hit the RB1 at a cheap rate. Definitely helps fill out your lineup. But yeah, I'm in a little bit of a cold streak in our head-to-heads here. I feel like I'm coming in second between the 3 of us every single week, and it's only by a couple of points here and there. So even I guess that's a good thing as well for the listeners, because it's not just one of us hitting and then the other 2 are kind of bottoming out. Like no, you're getting good picks here out of all of us. And then from there, it's on you, the listener, to kind of put those pieces of the puzzle together and figure out what winning combination is going to put stacks of cash in your pocket from week to week.
No, exactly. And it was a great call also by Stevenson. I was in the stands this past week, and I was pretty pumped when he ripped off that 64-yarder. So it was a lot of good calls last week. But and my bullish buy this week is Amon-Ra St. Brown with a price of $8,300. And the Lions are coming off a bye. I think they're going to be ready to go against the LA Chargers, who are ranked 27th against receivers. They haven't been great at stopping the wide receiver position. And I just think it's a dream matchup for Amon-Ra. It has the highest over-under of the week at 48.5. So I think a lot of points are going to be scored. The Lions offense excels at throwing over the middle. And per PFF, the Chargers defense ranks dead last in EPA allowed per pass on such plays. EPA is expected points added. Essentially, it just measures how well a team performs compared to their expectations on a play-by-play basis. And on top of that, the Chargers are third worst in success rate when teams throw over the middle of the field against them. So I think that just sets up for, like I said, a perfect scenario for Amon-Ra to eat. I think the Chargers are going to be able to put up points as well. So it should be a high scoring affair. And I'm assuming Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to be a benefactor of that. So I'm very happy to get Amon-Ra St. Brown into my lineup in week 10.
Well, you're not the only one on this program who is high on Amon-Ra St. Brown. We will not be hearing from Aaron Downtown Brown tonight, but he did give us his picks, and Amon-Ra St. Brown is also his bullish buy. So right out of the gate, you're getting some consensus from the Sunday Surefire crew, which usually pans out pretty well. So I don't have St. Brown in my lineup, but I like the call. I like targeting that game that should be high scoring. So I'm on board with it, even though I'm not rolling with it this week. And we'll just go right to mine. I'm going to go with the running back position. I'm going to go Travis Etienne against the San Francisco 49ers for $7,100. And there's just a handful of running backs that are matchup proof, and Etienne is proving quickly to be one of them. A big part of that is, of course, the consistent volume that he's getting through the first 8 games of the season. On 7 of those occasions, he's touched the ball at least 17 times, and he's registered at least 3 receptions in 7 games this season. And of course, he scored 7 TDs along the way so far too. Obviously, that's big when you find the end zone, really blows up your score. And he, like I said, he just game script proved all around. He's involved no matter what's going on around him. And the 49ers Jacksonville game actually has the 3rd highest over underline on the slate this week. So another game that should be putting up, that we should see teams putting up points in bunches. The Jags are also coming off their bye week, so he's had a chance to rest up a little bit from that heavy workload. So he should be rearing to go for this one. And for just $7,100, it's not a massive number where you're significantly hamstringing yourself in other aspects of your lineup. So I went with Travis Etienne, $7,100 against the 49ers.
Etienne is starting to be one of the safer plays amongst running backs this season. The running back position it just isn't really giving us the oomph that we have seen in the past. And Etienne is one of the few guys that are giving you week to week stud production. So I like the call in that sense. I think San Francisco, I mean, typically speaking, you think of San Francisco as a tough matchup, but they have been allowing some high scores as of late. They do rank 5th in rush yards allowed per game. But as you said, Etienne is almost a lock for probably 20 touches, and he's just been an absolute workhorse. In the last 4 games, he's scored 26, 20, 23, 23, 40. It's just he's just on an insane run. So it's hard not to like that pick when Travis Etienne is just getting all the work he can handle, and he's converting on it.
For sure. It really is a rarity now, the running back position dying off, at least in terms of what it was 10 plus years ago. But yeah, whenever you can put those high profile running backs in your lineup for right around $7,000, I'm willing to do it. So we'll see how that one pans out. I'm going to have some more thoughts on this game down the line too. So we'll put a pin in that one for now, but let's move on to our defenses here in our 2 deep section. I got to know, are you paying up big money for defenses this week, my man, or are you kind of cheaping out on us here?
So I cheaped out last week and it did not work out. The Giants just completely laid an egg, just completely fell flat. So I'm going the opposite direction. I am going to start the most expensive defense of the week, and that's the Dallas Cowboys, who are playing those New York Giants at 4,400. The Giants are ranked 32nd against opposing defenses. And I just don't know how you can keep them out of your lineup this week. Tommy DeVito should be under center this week versus Dallas. And with Daniel Jones under center in week 1, this Dallas defense scored 37 fantasy points. And this Giants team got a lot worse since week 1. They sacked the Giants 8 times last week. DeVito was credited being sacked 6 times. Daniel Jones twice. Unfortunately, Daniel Jones left that game with an ACL injury, but the Raiders just absolutely destroyed them. DeVito threw 2 picks, and like I said, the Raiders had eight sacks, and the Cowboys have a much better defense than the Las Vegas Raiders. So, in my opinion, I just don't. I just think this matchup is way too tantalizing to not pay up for. I just don't see you cheap if you cheap out on a defense this week. I don't the cost savings that you get in the positional players, I still don't think you make up the points that I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to get this week. I just think it's just a dream matchup for the Cowboys, and I just think the Giants are going to get slaughtered. So I think it was an easy call to pay up this week.
I completely agree on that, and for a lot of the same reasons you mentioned, I also inserted the Dallas Cowboys into my lineup this week. So I could definitely keep piling on here and add to that. Aaron did go a different route, so we'll get to his pick in a second here. But while we're talking Dallas, the 4,400 mark is about as expensive as you'll find a defense on the slate just about any given week. And that's really just because, the DFS algorithm and the handicappers out there, all the experts in the industry are just all over this one. Just a really good Dallas Cowboys defense playing at home against the lowly Giants team. Who knows who's playing quarterback for them this week? It's going to be an absolute train wreck regardless of who they trot out there. And this Dallas defense specifically, we know they're good, but they've particularly feasted against teams that are in the bottom third of the league in points per game, which, of course, the Giants certainly are. They've had 4 such matchups for teams in that category so far this year. And in those games, they've returned 15 or more fantasy points in each of those matchups. And they also played this same Giants team back in week 1. And that's when they had Daniel Jones in the lineup. If you remember, they smacked him around on Sunday Night Football. They beat him 40-0. And in that game, they returned a ridiculous 37 points in that matchup, which is absurd. And that's probably not even going to happen again this week. But the moral of the story here, folks, the big takeaway is just spend the money on defense this week. Spend it up on Dallas, and you're not going to regret it later. But to give you a little bit of a different perspective, Aaron did cheap out on us here. Good to give you that range, one at the top, one at the bottom. And so he's actually going with the Bengals. He thinks that in the matchup with the Texans here that Houston's not going to be able to replicate what they did a week ago by putting up that big 39-point margin. He just thinks that Cincinnati's going to get ahead on them, and they're going to be essentially playing catch up from there, which could lead to turnovers and all those sacks from CJ Stroud, the young quarterback, and all those things. So obviously we're in agreement here on Dallas. Do you have any thoughts on Aaron rolling with Cincinnati this week?
As I said, I just don't think it's smart to go in another direction this week. In weeks past, I get it. Let's save a couple thousand. Let's say $1,500, and I'll get a better player in the positional players. But as I mentioned before, I just think the point difference you're going to see with the Dallas defense versus the Bengals defense, I don't think that extra $2,000, $1,500 that you're going to spend up on a quote unquote better player is going to make up for that difference. And I honestly don't want to bet against CJ Stroud right now either. I mean, the guy just threw for 5 touchdowns and over 400 yards. He's completely turned that organization around, and it's crazy to see what he's doing thus far as a rookie. And I hope the train keeps rolling for him. So I'm in disagreement with Downtown Brown here. I would just pay up for the Dallas Cowboys defense, and I think he may be getting a little too cute trying to rain on the Texans parade right now.
I completely agree. I hate the call too, so I'll just say that confidently that I'm not in favor of Aaron Downtown Brown's Cincinnati Bengals call up for this week. But Aaron has this funny thing where when sometimes he says these crazy, outlandish things, and every now and again they actually pan out for him. So I'm not telling you there's a 0% chance it doesn't work out for him here. I'm just telling you that conventional logic would say go with Dallas, and you and me are on that side of it as well. So we'll leave it at that. It's 2-1 for now, Aaron, but we'll put a pin in that, and we'll see how that pans out in week 10. And with that, let's just keep the train chugging along, my man. We're going to go to the pick 6 category here. These are the players that you have to really cut some costs with typically and kind of get those cheaper guys in your lineup here. So, Ethan, throwing the ball right back to you, brother. Who do you have as your first pick 6 player for this week?
Kind of a dirty pick right here. He hasn't had a great season, and his dynasty stock, fantasy stock has fallen considerably over the last probably year year and a half, and that's running back Najee Harris at 4,900. And I just like the matchup. They're going against the Pittsburgh Steelers, are at home against the Packers. The Packers are a team who have been struggling to score points, and they're 24th ranked against the run. I just think the Steelers are going to play some smash mouth football, and I think Harris is going to get a ton of opportunity on the ground. He did pretty well against a pretty decent Tennessee rushing defense last week. He had 16 carries for 69 yards and a touchdown. He's had double-digit fantasy points in the last 3 weeks, including 2 touchdowns. And I think he's starting to kind of get a little roll here. I'm projecting that he's going to get a minimum 15 carries again this week, and I just think he takes advantage of it. I don't think the Packers are going to be able to put up a ton of points against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I think it's going to lead to a run-heavy game script for the Pittsburgh Steelers, win another ugly game, and get out of Dodge with a W. So I like Najee Harris for $4,900 this week.
So I have a running back in that same game and plays for the same team as Najee Harris, but I actually have Jaylen Warren in my lineup. I just think he does a little bit more in the passing game. I think he looks more explosive as well. So I think if one of these backs is going to hit a home run, it's going to be Jaylen Warren. But the touch distribution was pretty close last week. I want to say it was 16 touches for Najee, 15 for Jaylen Warren. So their workloads it's getting closer and closer. It'll probably, between these two, it's probably going to come down to who finds the end zone. If the workload is going to be similar, but I'm just going to gamble on Warren, who does a little bit more in the passing game, and maybe he hits a big play or not. But he actually was not a guy that I was going to put in my pick six lineup here. But do you have any thoughts on maybe the Warren versus Najee comparison before I go on to my first guy?
I completely agree that Warren looks like the more explosive back. I don't know if you remember way back in August before the season, we were talking about Jaylen Warren. He was one of my sleeper picks because I did think he looked more explosive than Najee Harris. He was steadily getting an increased workload, and he was just crazy efficient with his touches. I do think he definitely has a better chance to break one than Najee, but kind of like you said, I think Najee is the one that's going to fall in the end zone if they get inside the 5, which is why I went with Najee Harris last week, first drive of the game. The Steelers move the ball down the field, and Najee Harris gets a touchdown. I think in the first or second drive. It was early on, so I'm hoping it's a similar result this week. But that's why I went with Najee.
Funny thing here, last point on the Steelers backfield comparison is that we're kind of talking about them both being really comparable. DraftKings agrees with us as well. Warren's priced at 5,000, Najee's priced at 4,900. So they're right. They are literally back to back when you go to look through the available backs to get into your lineup. So we'll see how that pans out. It'll probably come down to who scores, and we'll see who that's going to be. But I'll go to my player here. I'm actually going quarterback. I'm going cheap in this range. $5,700 for Brock Purdy, going back to this Jacksonville 49ers game. And, for the first stretch of games to Brock Purdy's career, the guy, he was ridiculous. He was winning every single week. It was unreal. But he has kind of hit a little bit of a speed bump here in his last 3 outings, throwing just 3 touchdowns to go along with 5 interceptions in that span. The team, of course, has lost all 3 of those games. Obviously, that's not all on him. They missed a makeable field goal against Cleveland. And then, he had the concussion towards the end of their game against Minnesota the following week. So things just have not really been shaping up for Purdy lately. So usually I'd want to see a player right the ship before I go back with them in my daily lineups. But that's just not the case here. I have a lot of faith in Kyle Shanahan and this 49ers football team around Brock Purdy to just kind of get things going in the correct direction coming out of a much-needed bye week. Deebo Samuel is expected to be back on the field for this one. So the San Fran skill player pool that we know is incredibly deep between Deebo, Ayuk, Kittle, and obviously CMC. They should all be ready to go for this game. And the Jacksonville defense has given up the 28th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks this year. Overall here, Ethan, this just feels like a spot to me where Purdy can rebound and San Fran kind of just reestablishes themselves as one of the top teams in the NFC with the stretch run of the 2023 regular season upon us. What do you think about that?
I love the call. I was actually on the fence to bring up Purdy as one of my pick 6 players, as he is in my starting quarterback slot for this week. So couldn't agree more. I think he bounces back, like you said, after the bye. Deebo's coming back. It's I just think it's going to be a smash spot for him. So I couldn't agree more, as I was very, very close to bringing him up as my pick six player.
Love it. We're kind of more or less in lockstep there again. Not quite. You didn't pull the trigger on it, but you like it. So it's worth rolling with. Let's sandwich both of Aaron's pick six players in here, and then I'll just give you your we'll get your immediate reaction to those. First guy here is Hollywood Brown for $5,200. He's just really looking forward to Kyler Murray being back in the lineup here. Kyler will actually be playing his first game since December of 2022. Ethan, you and I made the trek out to Arizona from the New England area to see that, and we saw Kyler Murray play for about 3, maybe 4 plays before he was just done, carted off the field. So he's getting back out there for the first time. So what are your thoughts on that one before I go into his next guy?
It's gonna be nice to see Kyler Murray back, and I think he does target Marquise Brown quite a bit. I mean, outside Marquise Brown, there's just not a ton there. So I definitely see the upside this week going with a guy like Marquise Brown for only 5,200. I mean, we all know Brown has the speed and the ability to pop off on any given play. So I do like the upside there for 5,200, and it'll be exciting to see what Kyler does this week.
This is probably a spot where I would have exercised a little bit more caution, just without Kyler playing football in essentially a year. And, the team, it's kind of a mess out there in Arizona. They obviously have one of the worst records in the league. Kyler is a guy who does rely a lot on mobility. So maybe he does stand in the pocket and throw in his first game back. I just think it's going to might possibly be a situation where he's not so sure of himself out there with a bad team around him coming off the injury. So I don't love the call. I don't hate the price, but I would have stayed away from the Cardinals players this week, but we'll see on that one. I could certainly see both sides of that coin. His second player that he went with here was TJ Hawkinson. He's just a big fan of Josh Dobbs here. Really thinks he gave that team a spark last week. And Hawkinson, of course, can be kind of that security blanket for a quarterback in Josh Dobbs, who doesn't know a ton of the playbook, is still kind of figuring it out. And he ended up scoring 14 fantasy points last week, Hawkinson did. So he's going with Hawkinson. It's $5,000, and they're going up against the Saints this week, who a team that's historically has a strong run defense, so you should have to throw the ball on them. So I actually like this call. I think Hawk could be that nice security check down guy, like I mentioned. But what are your thoughts on Hawkinson this week?
I like the Hawkinson call. Just one more comment with Hollywood Brown. You did mention that Kyler may be obviously not fully kind of ready to go, and he may be just a little off kilter a little bit, but that may favor Marquise Brown a little bit, just because he has that familiarity with him all the way obviously back in college, and he's obviously played with him in Arizona. So I think in what Aaron's thinking is he's going to lean on Brown, as he has that comfortability with him. So it could pan out, but I definitely understand the hesitation from you, Kamish. And then TJ Hawkinson, I think a guy like Joshua Dobbs, who's been there 2 weeks now, whatever it's been, is going to lock into somebody. And TJ Hawkinson, I think, is going to be that guy. 7 receptions for 69 yards last week. I think he has another good week this week. It was funny. I was I was listening to another podcast, and they were mentioning that Joshua Dobbs was literally asking like guys like Jordan Addison and TJ Hawkinson what the reads were on this play, or what to do, because he was literally there less than a week. So it was kind of funny that they're almost like playing a little backyard football, telling Dobbs exactly what's going on, and he still went out there and I believe was QB4 of the week, which is kind of crazy. So I do like the TJ Hawkinson call.
Yeah, we'll see how that one pans out. I mean, the Dobbs story is a good one. It's already shaping up to be something that, that we need a 30 for 30 on what the guy's been doing over the last year.
Seriously.
Between showing up last minute to play in Tennessee a year ago, to obviously he gets to Arizona. They don't have his jersey available in the pro shop. He's the starting quarterback. To now he's getting shipped over to Minnesota in the middle of the year, doesn't know the playbook, and is out there winning games for teams. So it's a good story for him, good story for the league. And hopefully he can keep it up, and hopefully for Aaron and Hawkinson can keep crushing here. But let's keep chugging along here on these pick six guys. Ethan, who do you got? Who else you got here? Who else are you putting in your lineup here for super cheap this week?
Yeah, so this player, I'm actually going to stay with the tight end position. I know we don't love piggybacking on great performances, but the matchup was just a little. it was just too great of a matchup for me to pass up. And I'm going to go Dalton Schultz for 4,900. He went off this past week. He had 10 receptions for 130 yards and a touchdown. And I just think he's going to have another high target share this week. The over-under of this game is 48, which is second on the slate. So I think it's going to be a high-scoring affair. And I know Aaron thinks the Bengals defense is going to come through this week, but I just think the Texans keep rolling. And I think Dalton Schultz is going to be a big reason for that. The Cincinnati Bengals haven't been very good at all against the tight end position. They ranked 32nd. They allowed George Kittle 9 catches for 149. They allowed the rookie Kincaid 10 catches for 81. And I just think CJ Stroud looks at Dalton Schultz again. As I mentioned, he just had, huge receptions totals and target totals this past week with 11 targets. And I don't see a scenario where he doesn't have another big game. So I really like Dalton Schultz this week. I hope he goes back-to-back killer games, but the matchup was just too much for me to stay away from.
I really thought you were going to drop the word tantalizing in there for the second time.
I was thinking about it, but I couldn't drop it twice.
You were thinking long and hard about it, I could tell. But yes, I like the logic. It's sound. It should be a high-scoring game. CJ Stroud's been balling as a rookie quarterback. Good matchup against the team in a high-scoring game. So I am all for that. You'll get no argument from me on that front. But speaking of piggybacking on high-profile performances at the tight end position, that's exactly what I'm going to be doing here with my pick. I'm going to be going with Taysom Hill, who's playing at Minnesota this week for 5,100. And I don't usually roll with tight ends who've seen 5 or fewer targets in 8 of 9 games played this year. But Hill is just a different deal altogether, my man. He just continues to be the ultimate all-purpose weapon for the Saints team. And he can catch the ball. He's got 20 receptions for 142 yards and a touchdown. He can run the ball. He's got 49 carries for 255 yards and 3 scores on the ground. He can throw the ball. He's got 6 attempts for 72 yards and a touchdown. Like, the guy's just the ultimate Swiss Army knife out there. And over the last 4 weeks, he's averaging 18 fantasy points per game, which is good for tight end 1 overall on a per game basis over that span. So the guy's absolutely crushing. And what this is here is really just a case of me wanting to ride this wave where I can get this type of upside and cost certainty, at least in terms of, the usage he's going to get at a price of just over $5,000. And sometimes you just got to keep rolling with those guys who are on a heater. So that's what I'm doing here with Taysom Hill. So what do you think about the do-it-all specialist down there in New Orleans?
Yeah, Taysom Hill. He's annoyed me over the years, vulturing touchdowns from my guy Kamara. I feel like there's always a stretch every single year where Taysom Hill is just top priority on the waivers or whatever it may be, and everybody's trying to get him their lineup because he's just going off. He had 11 rushing attempts last week, which I believe was more than Kamara, who only had 9. And he's just been a big part of that offense, and I think that continues. Like you said, the Saints are probably going to ride that heater, and you're going to ride that heater. So I don't hate the call. A lot of tight end call outs in the pick 6 category. Just a lot of good matchups, a lot of good options. But I'd rather start Schultz, but I definitely see where you're coming from at the tight end position. A guy that can that gets that amount of carries, gets that kind of goal line work, and also is a threat in the receiving game. Definitely can pay dividends.
If the Saints really want to break the NFL, they should just have Taysom Hill line up to return a punt this week, just to do it. He probably could do it too. I wouldn't put anything past that guy, but yeah, he's the definition of a gadget guy with the volume to go along with it. So we'll see how that pans out here. We'll see how our tight ends look. But one thing that we definitely need to see what pans out here is this Thursday night game here. Only game on the slate, gets the week kicked off. You always got to watch it no matter what it is, but it's a little bit of an ugly one here in our under the lights category. And that, of course, is Panthers at Bears. Chicago is currently a 3.5-point favorite in this one. The over-under is at 39. And this one looks like an ugly Thursday night matchup. And where more quarterback uncertainty on a Thursday night. We're not sure who's going to be playing quarterback for the Bears. Is it going to be another week of the rookie Tyson Bagent, or is it going to be Justin Fields getting back under center for Chicago? Either way here, It's not two great football teams by any stretch of the imagination. These two squads have a combined 3 wins on the season entering this game. Bryce Young, the number 1 overall pick out of Alabama, has not exactly been playing inspiring football for the Carolina Panthers, coming off a game in which he tossed not 1, but 2 pick sixes last week. Very impressive. He, it's just kind of been a hard watch if you're a Panthers fan. I know we have a number of Panthers fans who listen to us, guys. So if you're listening here to this one, just keep pounding, as they say down there, and hope for the best. Hopefully Young can turn it around, but we'll see what happens on fields. So I guess that's kind of my quick thoughts, just kind of setting the table for the game itself. Why don't you give me how you think the game's going to pan out, and then I'll give you a little bit more on that before we get to our captain's plays.
I think this is going to be a very ugly affair on a Thursday night. Just talking about Bryce Young, I can't imagine how Carolina Panthers fans, the organization feels. They see Bryce Young out there tossing pick six after pick six, and they see CJ Stroud throwing for 400 yards and 5 touchdowns. And it's like they gave up a decent amount to go up to get Bryce Young. And it's just crazy. So it's not looking great for Bryce Young right now. It's not looking great for Carolina. It's just kind of crazy how one decision taking CJ Stroud or taking Bryce Young over CJ Stroud, and you see where Carolina's going, and you see CJ Stroud over there in Houston just turning that organization around, because it's not like Houston has all these insane playmakers, right? I mean, Noah Brown just went off for 153 yards. So it's just crazy to see what he's doing. And it just, I don't know, if you're a Carolina Panthers fan, you better hope Bryce Young turns around quick. But I think this is going to be a very ugly, ugly game. I think running backs on both sides are going to have big days. And it's going to be a lot of ground and pound on Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk CJ Stroud versus Bryce Young any day of the week, because as you know, I was a CJ Stroud guy from day one, especially over Bryce Young. I just didn't really see how people were so enamored with him.
I never saw it.
Yeah, we were not big young guys here. We get the tape to back that up if we ever want to pull it. We probably should cut up that episode sometime where we were talking rookies back in the spring, but we don't need to rehash that a ton. But so I guess back to this game here in particular, I think it's going to be ugly too, ground and pound football, as you say. I do think that the Bears win this game, whether it's Fields or Bagent. So I do like them on the money line. I'm not sure how confident I am in the spread in this one. That the hook that they threw on there for the 3.5 just really has me a little bit worried. I could easily see this game being decided by a field goal. What's going to be a low scoring game. So I think the Bears do try to run the ball a lot and come out with a close win at home, which gets me right into our captain's lineup here. And folks, so if you're not sure exactly what we're talking about with the captain's lineup, you can pick any game you want on the slate. You can set a 6-player lineup on DraftKings that you get a salary cap just like you would for the normal slate, but you can designate one player to be your captain, and that player, they cost 1.5 times their normal rate to occupy your captain slot, but you end up getting a 1.5 point or 1.5 times a number of points that they would get typically for being in that captain slot. So that's what we do here. We do the Thursday game each and every week for those who are new to the program. And so we're going to talk about who we're putting in our captain's lineups now. And I'll start with this one. I'm going to go off the theme of pounding the rock. I'm going to go with D'Onta Foreman. It's cost $12,900 to get him into your lineup. And in recent weeks, Foreman has made the most of injuries to other running backs on this team. He was actually inactive between weeks 2 and 5, but over the last 4 games, he's actually touched the ball 65 times, and he's exceeded 65 rushing yards in 3 of those 4 contests. Roschon Johnson is back from the concussion, but he's averaging just 6 touches per game in his return, only touched the ball 3 times last week. So he really very much has been playing a back seat to D'Onta Foreman. And while Chicago did open up Khalil Herbert's practice window on his return from IR, he remains unlikely to play this Thursday. So we'll see where he goes on that here. I got a little bit more to add on Foreman, but what's your quick takeaway from for my captain's pick here?
I completely agree. He's my captain as well. So we're in lockstep there. I just to piggyback off your reasoning, I do think the Bears win this game. It's in Chicago. Like we said, it's gonna be an ugly ground and pound game. And D'Onta Foreman, has just been the guy for Chicago on the ground. He had 20 carries last week. I think if Khalil Herbert remains sidelined, I think he probably has 25 plus carries this week against Carolina. It's going to be an ugly game, and I think it's going to go through number 21 of the Chicago Bears because Badgett hasn't looked great, and you don't really need to do much offensively to beat the Carolina Panthers. So I do really like that call. As I said, I think this is going to be the game of the running backs because Chicago's not very good defending the run either. So I think there's a potential for Hubbard to have a decent day as well. Keep that ball out of Bryce Young's hands so he doesn't cost his team any more points. But I really like the call, and we are in lockstep for our Thursday night captain's lineup.
Yeah, we are in lockstep with it, which is always fun. And one thing we were in lockstep with last week was all three of us actually had Jonathan Taylor in our lineups against this very same defense on Sunday. So this is another case of a good matchup for our running back. Foreman is certainly not JT, but for one game, I'm willing to fire up here in my captain slot. It looks like you are as well. Aaron did not give us a captain's pick for the show or a hot take, but if you're following us on Discord, like you should be, I'm sure he'll have those posted in there for you folks to check out and maybe set some player props on those as well. So I guess we'll just move on here from this disgusting Thursday night football game that the league saddled us with for week 10. And let's just go to our hot takes here, my man. Give me something that's gonna scorch the earth. Give me a melting hot take here that you have for this week.
I'm hot. This is why I'm hot. This is why I'm hot.
I'm going to go Amon-Ra St. Brown, 8 or more receptions for 125 plus yards and a touchdown. As I said, the Chargers aren't very good covering the middle of the field. That's what the Detroit Lions do best in the pass game. They're coming off a bye. I expect big things from the Detroit Lions offense, and Amon-Ra St. Brown's a big reason for it.
All right, there you go. Backing up with your bullish buy with your hot take. That's a sound strategy that I've done myself on this program many a time. So we'll see how that one pans out. You were close in your hot take last week. I hit my hot take last week, so I'm looking to go 2 for 2 this, or at least two in a row, which would be great. I'm going to go to the Vegas Raiders and Josh Jacobs specifically. I'm going to say he has 130 plus scrimmage yards and a touchdown against the Jets on Sunday Night Football. The Raiders were confident in handing him the rock 26 times last week, just showing a willingness to get in there and slug it out and pound it. The Jets, as we know, they're tough to throw the ball against with those outside corners, and the Raiders, they want to run it, so it kind of just plays into what they want to do well. A lot of times with an interim head coach, that they'll simplify the game plan, especially in the early weeks of that coach taking over, and that's just going to involve pounding the rock behind a young quarterback. So I think we could see Jacobs get more involved even in the passing game as well. Maybe some of those screen passes that we've seen him catch in the past that made him so valuable last season. But overall here, he's a volume monster, and I want to bet on him with my hot take in week 10.
I like that Jacobs call. It's kind of crazy. He had 26 carries, and I don't think he had a single target. He had 0 receptions. It was just ground and pound and bell cow Jacobs. So in over there in Las Vegas. So Jacobs is definitely starting to return to form last year. He's been putting some pretty good performances back to back. So it would be nice to see him put up a 130-yard scrimmage performance.
Completely agreed. The last thing I thought a week ago was that I was going to go back-to-back weeks with the Raiders for my hot takes. But hey, if that's what pans out, if that's what it takes to keep putting money in the pockets of our listeners here, there's going to be some good odds on this here. So check us out on our social medias on Discord. I'll drop the odds in there with the player props become available, so you know what you can cash in on this week. But that's what we have for you folks here. A quick episode here with just the two of us. And until next time, folks, peace.